We survived and made it to 2021. 2020 was one heck of a year, and for those of you guys who have been with me for the last 5.5 months or so, again, just wanted to say thank you so much for hanging with me through our End Times Eschatology Conspiracy Theory series. And it's super important because even though we're moving on to a new series, we really are nearing the end of time and the return of Christ is imminent. So there's just a lot of things that we need to be keeping our eyes peeled for along the way. Nevertheless, the Bible also says to occupy until that time comes and to just continue living life. Humans are very resilient. People are still making resolutions and deciding which things and people and activities to cut out from their life or add into their life. That said, don't forget about Adonai Tech as well as HPZN Music, because we're going to have hot playlists of Christian artists and some new jams from myself from time to time as well. I am introducing to you guys a new series for 2021. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and that is The Biggest Losers of the Bible. And we think about some of these people who we want to model our lives after, whether they had supernatural experiences or regular experiences, and we often forget they had to deal with the human experience, full of twists and turns, highs and lows. So we're going to kick off the series with Father Abraham.
Father Abraham had many sons, many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord.
Abraham also had many challenges and didn't really think he was gonna get many sons. So I think he's a perfect person to start off our Genesis exploration of the biggest losers of the Bible.
The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Iscah were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran. But Sarai was unable to become pregnant and had no children. One day, Terah took his son Abram, his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and his grandson Lot, his son Haran's child, and moved away from Ur of the Chaldeans. He was headed for the land of Canaan, but they stopped at Haran and settled there. Terah lived for 205 years and died while still in Haran. The Lord had said to Abram,
"Leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. I will make you into a great nation. All the families on earth will be blessed through you."
So Abram departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people he had taken into his household at Haran, and headed for the land of Canaan. When they arrived in Canaan, Abram traveled through the land as far as Shechem. There he set up camp beside the oak of Moreh. At that time, the area was inhabited by Canaanites. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said,
"I will give this land to your descendants."
And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord who had appeared to him. After that, Abram traveled south and set up camp in the hill country, with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built another altar and dedicated it to the Lord, and he worshiped the Lord. Then Abram continued traveling south by stages toward the Negev. At that time, a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go down to Egypt where he lived as a foreigner. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sarai,
"Look, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her.' So please tell them you're my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you."
And sure enough, when Abram arrived in Egypt, everyone noticed Sarai's beauty. When the palace officials saw her, they sang her praises to Pharaoh, their king, and Sarai was taken into his palace. Then Pharaoh gave Abram many gifts because of her: sheep, goats, cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and accused him sharply.
"What have you done to me?"
he demanded.
"Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and get out of here."
Pharaoh ordered some of his men to escort them, and he sent Abram out of the country, along with his wife and all his possessions. So Abram left Egypt and traveled north into the Negev, along with his wife and Lot and all that they owned. And they pitched their tents between Bethel and Ai, where they had camped before. So disputes broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. Lot chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley to the east of them. He went there with his flocks and servants and parted company with his uncle Abram. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, and Lot moved his tents to a place near Sodom and settled among the cities of the plain. So Abram moved his camp to Hebron and settled near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. There, he built another altar to the Lord. Then the rebel kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela, also called Zoar, prepared for battle in the valley of the Dead Sea. The victorious invaders then plundered Sodom and Gomorrah and headed for home, taking with them all the spoils of war and the food supplies. They also captured Lot, Abram's nephew who lived in Sodom, and carried off everything he owned. When Abram heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he mobilized the 318 trained men who had been born into his household. Then he pursued Chedorlaomer's army until he caught up with them at Dan. Abram recovered all the goods that had been taken, and he brought back his nephew Lot with his possessions, and all the women and other captives. After Abram returned from his victory over Chedorlaomer and all his allies, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is, the king's valley. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem and a priest of God Most High, brought Abram some bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abram with this blessing.
Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has defeated your enemies for you.
Then Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods he had recovered. The king of Sodom said to Abram,
Give back my people who were captured, but you may keep for yourself all the goods you have recovered.
Abram replied to the king of Sodom,
I solemnly swear to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread or sandal thong from what belongs to you. Otherwise, you might say, I am the one who made Abram rich. I will accept only what my young warriors have already eaten, and I request that you give a fair share of the goods to my allies, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre.
Sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him,
No, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own who will be your heir.
Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him,
Look up into the sky and count the stars if you can. That's how many descendants you will have.
And Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord counted him as righteous because of his faith. The Lord told him,
Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon.
So Abram presented all these to him and killed them. Then he cut each animal down the middle and laid the halves side by side. He did not, however, cut the birds in half. Some vultures swooped down to eat the carcasses, but Abram chased them away. As the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a terrifying darkness came down over him. Then the Lord said to Abram,
You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end, they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land, for the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction.
Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram,
The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her.
And Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress, Sarai, with contempt. Then Sarai said to Abram,
This is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me.
Abram replied,
Look, she is your servant, so deal with her as you see fit.
Then Sarai treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. The angel of the Lord said to her,
Return to your mistress and submit to her authority.
Then he added,
I will give you more descendants than you can count.
And when Abram was 99 years old, God said to him,
This is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. What's more, I am changing your name. It will no longer be Abram. Instead, you will be called Abraham, for you will be the father of many nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. Your descendants will become many nations, and kings will be among them. I will confirm my covenant with you and your descendants after you, from generation to generation. This is the everlasting covenant. I will always be your God and the God of your descendants after you. And I will give the entire land of Canaan, where you now live as a foreigner, to you and your descendants. It will be their possession forever, and I will be their God.
And God said to Abraham,
Your responsibility is to obey the terms of the covenant. You and all your descendants have this continual responsibility.
Then God said to Abraham,
Regarding Sarai, your wife, her name will no longer be Sarai. From now on, her name will be Sarah. And I will bless her and give you a son from her. Yes, I will bless her richly, and she will become the mother of many nations.
Then the men got up from their meal and looked out towards Sodom. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way.
Should I hide my plan from Abraham?
The Lord asked.
For Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham all that I have promised.
So the Lord told Abraham,
I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah. Because their sin is so flagrant, I am going down to see if their actions are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know.
The other men turned and headed towards Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham. Abraham approached him and said,
Will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living there in the city. Will you still sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes?
Abraham pressed his request further.
Suppose there are only 40, Lord.
Abraham pleaded.
Let me speak. Suppose only 30 righteous people are found. Since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20.
Finally, Abraham said,
Lord, please don't be angry with me if I speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found there.
And the Lord replied,
Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10.
When the Lord had finished his conversation with Abraham, he went on his way. Abraham got up early that morning and hurried out to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. He looked out across the plain towards Sodom and Gomorrah and watched as columns of smoke rose from the cities like smoke from a furnace. But God had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain. Abraham moved south to the Negev and lived for a while between Kadesh and Shur. And then he moved on to Gerar. While living there as a foreigner, Abraham introduced his wife Sarah by saying,
She is my sister.
So King Abimelech of Gerar sent for Sarah and had her brought to him at his palace. But that night, God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him,
You are a dead man, for that woman you have taken is already married.
But Abimelech had not slept with her yet, so he said,
Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Didn't Abraham tell me she is my sister? And she herself said, yes, he is my brother. I acted in complete innocence. My hands are clean.
In the dream, God responded,
Yes, I know you are innocent. That's why I kept you from sinning against me, and why I did not let you touch her. Now return the woman to her husband, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet.
Abimelech got up early the next morning and quickly called all his servants together. When he told them what had happened, his men were terrified. Then Abimelech called for Abraham.
What have you done to us?
He demanded.
What crime have I committed that deserves treatment like this, making me and my kingdom guilty of this great sin? No one should ever do what you have done. Whatever possessed you to do such a thing?
Abraham replied,
I thought, this is a godless place. They'll want my wife and will kill me to get her. And she really is my sister, for we both have the same father but different mothers.
Then Abimelech took some of his sheep and goats, cattle, and male and female servants, and he presented them to Abraham. He also returned his wife, Sarah, to him. Then Abimelech said,
Look over my land and choose any place where you would like to live.
And he said to Sarah,
Look, I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver in the presence of all these witnesses. This is to compensate you for any wrong I may have done to you. This will settle any claim against me, and your reputation is cleared.
The Lord kept his word and did for Sarah exactly what he had promised. She became pregnant, and she gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age. This happened at just the time God had said it would, and Abraham named their son Isaac. 8 days after Isaac was born, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. When Isaac grew up and was about to be weaned, Abraham prepared a huge feast to celebrate the occasion, but Sarah saw Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and her Egyptian servant Hagar, making fun of her son Isaac. So she turned to Abraham and demanded,
Get rid of that slave woman and her son. He is not going to share the inheritance with my son Isaac. I won't have it.
This upset Abraham very much because Ishmael was his son. But God told Abraham,
Do not be upset over the boy and your servant. Do whatever Sarah tells you. For Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted. But I will also make a nation of the descendants of Hagar's son, because he is your son too.
So Abraham got up early the next morning, prepared food in a container of water, and strapped them on Hagar's shoulders. Then he sent her away with her son, and she wandered aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith.
Abraham,
God called.
Yes,
He replied,
here I am.
take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you.
On the third day of their journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance.
Stay here with the donkey.
Abraham told the servants.
The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back.
So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said,
Father?
Yes, my son?
Abraham replied.
We have the fire and the wood,
The boy said,
but where's the sheep for the burnt offering?
God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son.
Abraham answered, and they both walked on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son, Isaac, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven.
Abraham, Abraham,
Yes,
Abraham replied.
here I am.
don't lay a hand on the boy.
The angel said,
Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son.
Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Yireh, which means the Lord will provide. Then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven.
This is what the Lord says. Because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies. And through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me.
Soon after this, Abraham heard that Milcah, his brother Nahor's wife, had borne Nahor 8 sons. The oldest was named Uz. The next oldest was Buz, followed by Kemuel, the ancestor of the Armenians, Kesed, Hazal, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There, Abraham mourned and wept for her. Then, leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders,
Here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial.
The Hittites replied to Abraham,
Listen, my lord, you are an honored prince among us. Choose the finest of our tombs and bury her there. No one here will refuse to help you in this way.
Then Abraham bowed low before the Hittite. Abraham was now a very old man, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. One day Abraham said to his oldest servant, the man in charge of his household,
Take an oath by putting your hand under my thigh. Swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not allow my son to marry one of these local Canaanite women. Go instead to my homeland, to my relatives, and find a wife there for my son Isaac.
I saw Rebecca coming out with her water jug on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water. So I said to her, Please give me a drink. She quickly lowered her jug from her shoulder and said, Yes, have a drink, and I will water your camels too. So I drank, and then she watered the camels. Then I asked, Whose daughter are you? She replied, I am the daughter of Bethuel. and my grandparents are Nahor and Milcah.
Then the servant told Isaac everything he had done. And Isaac brought Rebekah into his mother Sarah's tent, and she became his wife. He loved her deeply, and she was a special comfort to him after the death of his mother. Abraham married another wife, whose name was Keturah. She gave birth to Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shuah. Abraham gave everything he owned to his son Isaac. But before he died, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them off to a land in the east, away from Isaac. Abraham lived for 175 years, and he died at a ripe old age, having lived a long and satisfying life. He breathed his last and joined his ancestors in death. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite. This was the field Abraham had purchased from the Hittites, and where he had buried his wife Sarah. After Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who settled near Beer Lahairoi in the Negev.
His life was full of challenges. He was able to overcome through faith and perseverance. So this man who is thought of so highly for so many people across the world, with him being the father of Ishmael, he's actually the patriarch in the Islamic world as well. His life was not perfect. I think that that's important to keep in mind. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the week and can't wait to see where it takes us next time. Bye guys.